Welcome back to Joyfully at Home. Today we are going to be making a special treat in our house. It's Mexican cornbread, similar to a standard cornbread that you might make, only it's kicked up just a little bit. It's got some bacon, sharp cheese, and jalapeños in it. It's great for if you're having a Mardi Gras party or a meal to celebrate Mardi Gras coming up here next week, or if you want something like this for the Super Bowl parties or anything like that, or if you just have those in your house that like a little spice in their cornbread, it's good anytime. If you like this recipe and you like the video, we will also be having now the links to an ad-free PDF printable form of the recipe right in the description. First of all, you're going to start with some bacon. We use this to line the bottom of our pan. You're going to want to use a cast iron pan for this cornbread. Makes the cornbread have a little bit of a crisp edge to it. Gets that nice bottom to it. All you want to do is just take some bacon slices and just slightly have them go up the sides of your pan here. And you can overlap them. What we're going to do eventually is we're going to crisscross them so it makes a nice weave on the bottom of your pan. It might take, depending on the size of your pan, 10 to 12 slices of bacon. Not a ton, but just enough that it will give it an amazing taste. This bacon, once we turn out our cornbread, will actually be the top of our cornbread, because once we turn it out, the bottom will be on the top side. And we'll go ahead and we'll continue to make our bacon layer on the bottom here. Now that you have your bacon slices in a basket weave pattern, just a simple basket weave, just an over-under kind of thing to line the bottom of your cast iron pan, we'll put this in a 350-degree oven for about 15 to 20 minutes. You want to give this bacon a little time to start cooking before we put our cornbread batter in here. So we're going to go ahead and put this in the oven now. Let it start to cook, start to render down. That'll give it a little bit of bacon grease in the bottom of the pan, so you won't have problems with sticking either. And then we'll go ahead and we'll pull it and have it ready for our cornbread batter. While our bacon is cooking in our cast iron pan in the oven, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get our cornbread batter done and ready. So we're going to start off with 2 cups of all-purpose flour, a cup of golden cornmeal. You can also do this with white cornmeal if that's what you have on hand. It's perfectly fine. We need a 1/3 cup of sugar. Gives it a little bit of sweet with the heat. Teaspoon of salt. 2 tablespoons of baking powder. And we'll go ahead and we'll mix those together so everything is evenly mixed. And then we'll start adding our other ingredients. This cornbread batter will be a nice light and fluffy batter, even though we're adding some heavier ingredients to it like bacon and a little bit of bacon fat. It's still, because of the ratio of cornmeal to flour, it's not a very grainy or crumbly cornbread batter. It's my standard cornbread batter that I use for any kind of recipes needing cornbread, whether it be a stuffing or corn muffins or anything like that. It comes out much lighter and fluffier than your typical grainy cornbread. That's not something that we tend to enjoy around here. So I kind of played with the recipe until I came up with a fluffier, lighter cornbread recipe. So now to this blend, we are going to go ahead and add our liquids. We have 2 large eggs. And this is what I mean by it's a little bit heavier. We have a half a cup of melted bacon grease. Now, if you don't have bacon grease on hand, you can also use butter. It will work just fine. You can use butter or bacon grease. And then we need a cup of buttermilk. And you'll want to mix those together, get them all nice incorporated together. And then we will add our jalapeños and our cheese. Now that we have our liquids all incorporated in our cornbread batter, we'll take a jalapeno, finely diced. You can add more or less to your taste. That was one large jalapeno. And then we have an entire brick, an 8-ounce brick of really nice sharp cheddar cheese. We shred that up and we'll add about half of that to our batter. The other half we'll reserve for the top of our cornbread when it comes time for it to be almost ready to come out of the oven. So we mix those two right into the batter, and then when our bacon is ready, we'll put this right on top of that hot bacon and bake it. Now that your bacon is partially cooked, as you can see, it starts to shrink ever so slightly, but it is starting to cook. You're going to take your cornbread batter and just place it over the bacon. And spread it right out to make sure it covers your bacon real well. Once you have it completely covered, and you'll see as you are spreading this out, you'll see a little bit of that bacon grease from your bacon pressing up against your sides a little bit, which will give your sides a nice crispy texture. And then we will put this back in the oven for about 45 minutes. In your last 15 of that, you will take your cornbread and add your sharp cheese. You'll take this, just sprinkle it onto the top and finish baking it for that final 15 minutes of the 45. So now we're going to put this in the oven and set our timer. So now that your Mexican cornbread is mostly done, you can see it's starting to brown nicely around the edges, and it has a little bit of give in the center. We'll take the remaining amount of our sharp cheddar cheese, we'll just kind of pat it out onto the top, and just very gently take it and spread it over the top of your cornbread. Now we put it back in the oven for another 15 minutes to get the cheese melted. Then you're all set. Now that your Mexican cornbread is all out of the oven, it's very, very hot, and I would suggest making sure that you have something over the handle of your cast iron pan. If you're not familiar with cast iron, it's extremely hot. What we do now is just take a very thin bladed spatula, or a butter knife even, will work just as well. Something that's very thin bladed, and just run it around the outer edges to make sure that we're not sticking in the pan anywhere. If you can run your blade around like that, you're not sticking. So then what we will do is take a pan or a tray, obviously heat resistant, and take it, and then we just flip the whole thing right over, and we let it sit for a few minutes like that, so everything will invert. And this is what it'll look like when you take your cast iron pan off. You've got that nice basket weave of your bacon, and you've got a nice, thick, very cheesy, with a little bite of jalapeno in it, Mexican cornbread.